So about 10 years ago, fishing started to blow up and get popular on YouTube, especially tackle review type videos. Do you guys remember the days of the tackle warehouse unboxing video? Well, back then, YouTube was flooded with videos of tackle reviews about reels from a new player on the block, and that is KastKing. I remember there were tons of videos about the $30 and $40 baitcasters from KastKing. Do you guys remember the Stealth? And what about this reel, the Assassin? Do you guys remember these reels? Now let's be honest, these reels were cheap in price because they were cheap in feel. My Assassin was sent to me by a subscriber, and I won't lie, the reel felt very fragile. Well, those days are gone. It's 2025 and KastKing has come a long way in a short period of time, and we go from this to this. This is the new MGTI Elite flagship baitcaster from KastKing. And yes, this is that reel that I found the most interesting and most exciting from this year's ICAST, and I did a preview video about it a few weeks ago. Well, turns out that KastKing saw the video and reached out to me wondering if they could send me out an MGTI for me to review. Now, this is not the first time KastKing has reached out to me. They've reached out several times in the past, but we couldn't come to terms on review stipulations. But luckily for me and luckily for you guys, we came to terms this time, and here is the stunning MGTI Elite. Now, this is not a budget $40 baitcaster. This reel is their Halo product, and it's priced accordingly, coming in at $299. Now, if you think that's expensive, realize that $299 is a mid-level reel for SHIMANO, DAIWA, or even GARCIA and LEWS. Their flagship reels go from the mid 400s all the way to the mid $700 price range. So enough talk, let's check this reel out. So before we begin, since this is the first, official time that I've worked with KastKing, they've actually given me a promo code, which I'm going to put on the screen for you. And that's going to get you guys a discount on this stunning MGTI. Now, as I talk about this reel, I'm going to rotate it slowly for you guys so you can take in all the details that you can. But this is KastKing's new flagship top of the line reel. And since it is their flagship reel, it appears to be their most advanced. And that's because, so far, from what I know, this is probably the most exotic reel ever made from any manufacturer. And that's purely down to the materials that KastKing has used to make this reel. And those materials actually make up its name, MGTI. So Mg is the element name for magnesium, which is what the frame is made out of. And Ti is the element name for titanium, which is what this spool is made of. But we'll get more into the spool a little bit later. I'm going to let you guys take a couple of more seconds to look at this stunning reel before I show you guys all its cool features. So the first cool feature we're going to go over has got to be this sick drag star. Just look at it. It's oversized, well machined, made out of aluminum, pretty sure. And with this drag star, you can do the, finesse technique of just reaching over with the finger and flicking it in order to rotate the handle and subtly move your bait. Now, this was a concept that Shimano pioneered way back in, I think, 2012 with their first ALDEBARAN BFS, but the way KastKing did it is different. Now with Shimano, they moved some things around and they pushed the handle closer to the frame. But with KastKing, as you can see, what they did is they bent the Dragstar arms in. And they also made the ends have, I guess, little tips that stick inward towards the frame. So as you can see, I'm just holding it with one hand. I can just reach over with my ring finger and just turn the Dragstar, and that turns the handle. Now this type of Dragstar was featured first in a reel that I did, I guess, a feature video on called Varus from KastKing, and it had a very similar style Dragstar, and I was always wondering when was KastKing gonna bring that over to the American market reels, and with MGTI they did. Now, second cool feature is check out this line guide. Hopefully the camera will focus, but what you're seeing there is a line guide very similar to a Shimano line guide, where the entrance is wider than the exit. There's the exit. So it's tapered, and it's similar to Shimano's line guides in the fact that it's kind of like an oval shape, but it's different than Shimano's because they laid the oval shape horizontally instead of vertically like Shimano did. So it's wider going horizontally or side to side versus vertically or top to bottom. So yeah, good looking line guide. It's not the biggest out there, but then again, it doesn't need to be. Now the next feature has got to be one of the best looking or the best looking feature on this reel. And that's going to be this huge brake dial. You can see it glimmering there, or at least the insert is. So with the Kestrel Elite, I remember that brake dial concept was so cool. I made a special effort just to point out its design. And with this MGTI, they took it one step further. First of all, it's much bigger and it is more of a traditional X pattern. But you can see that there is a little cutout that gives you a window just to let you know what brake setting you're on. And the function or actuation of this brake dial is super precise. Very befitting of a flagship top of the line reel. Clicks are very positive and very refined. There's no slop, no wiggling, no mushiness. And let me count how many settings are on this external dial. Okay, so hopefully you can see, but the number in the window is 0. And then it goes to, I guess, a dash. And then 1. So in between every number there is a dash. That can be kind of confusing if you're like stuck in a dash, but let me go ahead and count these brake settings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, so we have 20 clicks for a total of 21 settings, and yeah, if you look in the window, that final number is a 10. And just the sheer size and the design of this brake dial, where you can stick your fingers right in these holes, is just next level. There's nothing coming out of Japan that's got a design as good as this. And obviously, hopefully you can see that it's machined aluminum or machined metal, and it's got the little, I guess, notches, which I think that's just for decoration. But yeah, definitely the best brake dial out of any reel on the market today. Alright, next up is a feature that's pretty common with reels these days, but you got a really long swept carbon fiber handle. KastKing decided to go with a glossy finish instead of the usual matte. And then you got these knobs. Now these knobs are as soft and grippy as Shimano's Septon knobs. Now a lot of companies have tried their best to imitate the softness and tackiness of Shimano Septon, and none of them have succeeded, but I think KastKing is right there. And they're also a good shape and size. Now of course, You got a clicking spool tension. Mine's kind of hard to turn, which is a good thing. You don't want to accidentally hit it. It's kind of on the small side, and the clicks are, you can definitely hear them, but they're kind of spaced like a Abu Garcia spool tension clicker. The clicks are better, but they're spaced far apart, like let's say an Abu Garcia. So it's kind of in between a DAIWA and an Abu Garcia when it comes to the clicking spool tension. But it's made of metal. It's got some machining cut into it for grip. Looks real nice. And you got this aluminum trim piece covering the gearbox. Kind of got a nice, subtle, understated design. But for all you who are wondering, yes. It's got a clicking drag. And the clicking drag definitely feels like a JDM clicking drag, more of a DAIWA feel versus a SHIMANO. So it's not rough or unrefined, it's very smooth and precise. So of course all these cool features mean nothing if the build quality on a reel is crap. But just like I said in the video, KastKing has come a long way in a short period of time. This reel is solid. Look at that. There's no clicking or clacking, no loose tolerances, making any kind of noises, making the reel feel cheap. And KastKing solved the issue that I had with their Kestrel Elite BFS, and that was a very vague and cheap feeling Dragstar click. The Dragstar click on the MGTI is very precise, very positive feeling, and more importantly, the tolerances have been tightened up and it is very solid feeling. Look at that. And also, they have tightened up the handle and gear tolerances, and this reel is glassy smooth. Now, it doesn't have that Shimano buttery, silky smoothness. It's kind of an in-between Shimano and DAIWA. But it is definitely a smooth reel. And the two things that I thought KastKing needed improving on, they fixed. And then of course, as you guys can see, this thing is stunning in a very subtle way. You know, you got your satin black finish that feels good. It's not rough feeling, it's smooth, but then you have just the right amounts of gunmetal, dark gray, and silver. Like the spool is silver, the thumb bar is chrome with a little rubber piece, little silver accents around the brake dial, not a huge amount of badging, you know, KastKing here, MGTI here, some kind of logo here, bearing count there, other specs printed on the bottom. But yeah, this definitely looks like a premium high-end flagship reel. And oh yeah, thumb bar. Now depressing the thumb bar initially, if you go real slow, kind of reminds me of a DAIWA where there's a little bit of give. But if you go real fast, like most of us will, then it's solid and smooth and there's no mush or play, which is a big pet peeve of mine, especially on expensive reels. Take note, DAIWA. So now it's time to get into what makes this reel special, and that's going to be this spool. And I definitely want to check out these brakes because I'm pretty sure they're new, or at least new to me, and I'm very eager to see how they work. Let's get a quick weight on this MGTI before we dive into that titanium spool. Now the MGTI, once again, the frame is made of magnesium and the side plates, I believe, made of carbon. Since it's based off of the Kestrel Elite frame, it's very small and compact, but let's see what the scale says. 5.15 ounces. So slightly heavier than what KastKing advertises, but still that puts this reel amongst the lightest reels in the world. And like I said, since it's based off of the Kestrel Elite frame, very small, compact, and comfortable to palm, as you can see, due to the pit viper shape of the body. So to get to this spool, you have to flip this latch, and yeah, the palm side plate is attached and spring-loaded. And here we go. I believe the first all titanium spool in the world. Now, as you can see just by how deep it is, this reel was not made for bait finesse, but according to KastKing, it's so light that it can cast down to 1/16 of an ounce. Let's look at that. Absolutely no porting, very deep. I believe it's either 28 or 30 millimeters. I'll put it up on the screen for you, but yeah, this spool being titanium, it's supposed to be much stronger than aluminum, much harder than aluminum, and much lighter than aluminum. So with that being said, I believe the literature at ICAST stated that because this is a titanium spool, that they were able to machine the walls extremely thin, therefore getting the weight down. But yep, there's the brake plate. Got a spool bearing. I believe the spool shaft is also made of titanium. But yeah, of course, I'm gonna pull out the special spool scale and we're gonna get a weight. Now, before we get a weight on this spool, I just discovered something that's a pleasant surprise. Now, before I received the reel, seeing that it is based on the Kestrel platform, I just assumed that the spool would be 28 millimeters, which is great for bait finesse, but for like regular bass fishing, that's kind of small. And in fact, I had planned on suggesting to KastKing in the future for a non-bait finesse reel, which the MGTI is, as you can see by the depth of the spool, to bump the spool size up to at least 30 to 32, maybe even 34 millimeters. But it turns out this MGTI spool is indeed 30 millimeters, not 28. So that's a big plus for general purpose bass fishing, but let's go ahead and get a weight. Alright, so mine is a little heavier than advertised at 7.14 grams with its bearing, but that is still very acceptable if you want to try to bait finesse with this reel, because the CURADO BFS spool is like 8.8 grams and the TATULA BF spool is like 10.5 grams. So of course, I'm going to take this bearing off and I'm going to get a true weight. Okay, so we got a bare spool, and keep in mind there is no porting on this spool at all. None in the center, none on the walls, just very little in the middle, but without the bearing, 6.26 grams. So that is about the same weight as the original DAIWA Alphas Air TW, the one that came out in 2020. And I believe it's about the same weight as the new Alphas BF as well, if I remember. So yeah, according to KastKing's numbers, this spool was made of aluminum. They wouldn't have been able to, I guess, drill or machine the spool walls as thin, and it would have resulted in a heavier spool by up to 50% if they were the same dimensions. So now let's get into this brake system that KastKing uses that I haven't seen before, and I want to see what makes it tick and how it works. So it was kind of tough to study the brakes because the side plate doesn't come off, but it didn't take long for me to figure out that this is basically somewhat like a modified form of mag tracks. Now it's not dynamic. I don't feel any kind of springs or anything. What it is this outer ring here that you see with the white graphics. I believe these are the magnets. Then of course, when you turn the dial, it moves these magnets closer or farther away. Just like that. So it's not a dynamic system, it's just a variant of the static mag track system. But the good news is, since this is an entire magnetic ring, I believe that's superior to if magnets were just on one side of the brake hub, just like a typical mag track system. In my experience, when there's magnets placed on both sides of the hub, those reels tend to be better casters than where the magnets are just on one side. But we'll see. But just to confirm, this, what is they call it, the Halo Vortex brake system is a static system. So in typical KastKing fashion, they give us a whole lot of reel for relatively little money, especially compared to its competition. And speaking of competitors, let's do a quick comparison of the MGTI Elite versus the big three reels that would compete with it on paper. So with Shimano, the competing reel is going to be the aging ALDEBARAN MGL that currently costs $500 at Tackle Warehouse. Now over at Abu Garcia, the competing reel is the MGLTX, coming in at $550. Now with DAIWA, the competing reel is the STEEZ CT, coming in at a stupid price of $750. Now all these reels have lightweight magnesium frames, high bearing counts, and smaller lightweight spools, but the MGTI is the only one with the super exotic aerospace grade titanium spool. And like I said, they fixed the problem areas of refinement around the handle and the drag star, and now the MGTI Elite feels as solid as refined as any high-end mainstream offering out there for only $299. So of course, the next thing that I want to do is string it up and do some casting around. I want to experience how a titanium spool does in casting. Will it be faster? Is it going to be a benefit? Exactly how good are these brakes? There are so many questions. But as I said guys, KastKing gave me a promo code you can use when you get your MGTI. So everybody leave a comment thanking KastKing for sending this reel out. There are so many companies out there who are too afraid to send me any reels to test out due to my testing methods. But KastKing is not one of them. Alright guys, thanks a lot.